If you have said to yourself, I should write that, or if someone has said to you, you should write that, then I'm talking to you because you need to write. And that's why you're tuned in to yWrite. Hi, I'm Angela Grout. I'm your host of yWrite, and thank you for tuning in to an episode of yWrite, where we talk to writers about why they're writing, what they're writing, and how they've written, so that, not only will you be interested in reading their books, but you're going to be interested in writing your own story, because we all have a story we want to write or want to share with someone, and there's so many different avenues to write a story, whether we're going to write it in a letter form, in a memoir, in a fictional story, or in a children's book. And I'll also throw in their poetry. So today, my guest is Bruce Cohn. He is here from Agawam, Massachusetts. And Bruce has written a children's book, and he's also written many other things, including poetry and a memoir. So we have lots to talk to him about. He has been a featured speaker at the Springfield Library, invited by the Poet Laureate, and he was to be able to talk for 7 minutes about his writings and to share them. He has written and shared multiple poetry with local people and published in a lot of different books. So we're going to just get right down to it and start talking to him about why he wrote his book, how he wrote it and published it, and find out a little bit about his illustrator too. So I want to welcome to the show Bruce Cohn. Bruce, hi.
Hi.
Thank you so much for coming to the studio, and we get to see each other in person.
Yeah, it wasn't such a great meeting on the telephone.
Yeah.
Little disaster there.
Yeah. We talked on the telephone, and I'll just share with the audience, I'm okay, everything's okay, but I had a kitchen fire in my house this past weekend, and we happened to be on the phone, and, I'm sure it was a little startling to him to say, I'm sorry, Mr. Cohn, I have to hang up and call 911.
Yeah, Jesus, my kitchen's on fire.
My kitchen was on fire. But a PSA little announcement, I have this really great fire blanket that I had bought, and it saved my kitchen.
Wonderful.
I mean, the commercial shows, pull the little strap and shake it and throw it on the flames, and that's all I did, and I ran out of the house, and it saved the house. So for a $20 blanket, it's well worth it. All right, so yes, we are in person. There's no smoke, there's no fire.
Right.
Everyone is whole and complete and healthy.
Yeah.
And you're here. I mean, I found out, through the Agawam community that you also run a writers group at the Agawam Senior Center.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, why don't I know about this? Why aren't I participating in it?
Yeah.
So this writers group you've been doing for a couple years now.
Oh, 5 years now.
And it meets on Tuesdays.
Every Tuesday, 1:30, and there's a group of approximately 6 of us, and the age group, there's a woman that's 96 that's just terrific.
Wow.
I mean,
She's got a lot of stories, I'm sure.
Oh, you wouldn't believe she was connected to the Kennedy family. She hung around with Gene Kennedy when she was a kid.
Wow.
And it just so many stories from her. It's just wonderful.
So you have people in the group that are writing memoirs and poetry.
Yeah, there's one guy that's writing a book that'll never get published.
Don't say never. He might.
No,
he doesn't want to do it.
Well, he wants to do it, but he writes everything down longhand and doesn't want to use a computer.
I am guilty of that. I write everything longhand, and I'm just starting to dictate my longhand into an email and then send it to myself.
Yeah.
So that once I have like a copy on the computer, I can then go in and edit it. I used to, type up my longhand, but I'm realizing that dictating it, lets me hear it.
Yeah.
Number one, and number two, it's a little bit quicker.
I usually tell everybody, read it aloud back to yourself.
Yes.
And it'll make more sense.
And in your writers group, you have people come in and they read what they've written.
Every week, yeah.
Yeah.
And we've got 2 people that are doing their memoirs,
yeah,
which is terrific. I mean, very good writers. I'm surprised. They're pretty good writers.
Well, maybe you're going to put together an anthology with their work.
I never even thought of that.
Yeah, it could be, the Bruce Cohn Writing Group's anthology.
Yeah, I'm thinking just writing about the group and the different goings on during the.
I do some of that with my writing groups. I'm like, oh, okay, we're all here at the museum, and we have, the judge, and we have, someone writing who's from the Red Cross, and it's just neat to see all these different stories, because when you do hear them, they become a little bit a part of you.
Yeah, they do, and I find that you can write things and you can keep reading it over and you make changes and it's never done.
Yeah.
It's never done.
That's the editing process of things, that we can over-edit and over-criticize ourselves, too.
Exactly.
And at some point you have to let it go. Right. Now, you've written a memoir, My Life in Times. I mean, this is like very cool, and you have everybody signing who's read it. How long did it take you to write this book?
2 years.
Okay. And how long did it take you to edit it?
And that took a while, too. My daughter helped with that. She was pretty good with it.
And this was something you published just for your family?
Yeah, I put out, I think I had 100 of them. I sent them around wherever, and
That's
I
nice.
ended up, this is the one I had. I got a clean copy someplace, but my wife passed away a short while back, and I don't know what she did with it.
Well, it's nice that, for memoir writing, it's nice when you have pictures in there and you have some of your poetry in here. So you've, really put together a really nice book for, family legacy.
Right. Well, it all started, Eric Bascom ran a writers group at Reed's Landing, and he was a friend of mine. And so I started going there on a Tuesday, and every week you brought something.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept putting them together, and he said, you got some good stuff. He says, you should probably put it together, see what you can do with it. And I ended up...
And you ended up with a whole book?
With a whole book. There's 220 pages in there.
It's so amazing, just when you sit down and you're writing, and whether you're journalizing or you're, writing your memories to either, share or even to remember, once it's all done, then you realize I have a lot here. I have something to work with. And because of what he did at Reed's Landing, here you're doing it in Agawam.
Yeah.
You're continuing even that legacy.
Right.
So that's really nice. You have a lot of poetry. I would love to have you read some poetry, but I don't know if you can do that. But you have contributed to poetry chapbooks and anthologies.
Yeah.
And this one here was published this year by the Agawam Public Library.
Right.
So you are one of the featured poets with a few poems in here.
Yeah, I got 3 of them in there.
Did you write these poems at the library?
No.
How did you submit? How did you get involved to submit for this chapbook?
Somebody contacted me from there and understood that I did do that. So I gave them 3, and they published all 3 of them in there.
That's so nice.
And one of them was, I did the day after my wife died. My daughter and I were there holding her hand, and when she passed, and it's right there.
Right there. Yeah. Can I read it?
Yeah,
because
sure.
it is a beautiful poem. It's called Hands. This is Hands by Bruce Cohn, who's right here, and I'm going to read this, and it's your voice here. When we first met, I knew this was the person that I wanted to spend my life with, and I held her hand. That special day we got married, we met at the altar. She looked so beautiful, and I held her hand. When we got the word that we were going to have our first child, and she was excited and afraid, I said, "Don't worry," and I held her hand. When we bought our first home and she worried about how to pay for it, we worked it out somehow, and I held her hand. All through our marriage, when things got tough, we sat together and talked it out and held her hand. During the last couple months, and her health got worse, she wasn't afraid, and this made me stronger, and I held her hand. During the last days of her life, she knew she wouldn't be coming home this time. She told me that she loved me, and I told her that I loved her too. And I held her hand. Now she is gone, and my life is lonely, and the house is empty. I know that she loved me right until the end. During this sad time, I think of her and the 65 years we were together, and I smile. This makes me strong. I can't hold her hand, but it's all right with me because now God holds her hand. It's beautiful. 65 years is no easy stretch of time.
No.
Congratulations on having that beautiful love in your life.
Thank you.
And having the inspiration and the courage to not only write it, but to share that.
Yeah, it's funny. I wrote that in like 20 minutes.
And you wrote this the day after she died?
I called my daughter and I read it to her and I said, "You think this is?" She says, "Are you kidding?"
Yeah. No, I mean, and a lot of times, poetry and inspiration comes that quick.
Yeah, that's the way it is.
And it's that fleeting thought, or that, that if you don't grab it, then
exactly
it could be gone.
Yeah.
So the fact that you sat down to write it, I mean, you didn't have to do that. You could have just sat there and had that moment. But you've written it, and it's something that a lot of people can relate to.
Right.
I mean, it doesn't matter if they've been married 65 years or not.
Right.
Whether they're, holding their wife's hand or their husband's hand or their
right.
sister's hand or their, son's hand.
Yeah. Like such response anytime anybody reads that.
Yeah, no. And I mean, it's so powerful when our words can help someone,
Well, if you can evoke any kind of emotion, good, bad, or indifferent, it's a good thing if you can get any kind of emotion.
Yeah. I mean, this little side note, like Steven Spielberg, I had watched the making of Jaws and they had interviewed him and stuff.
Yeah.
And, when he was writing it, he was like, no one's going to like this. You just have all your writers dousing criticism.
Exactly.
So when they were doing the movie, showcasing it, they wanted him to sit in the front row.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Spielberg, we saved a seat. And he's like, no. He's hiding behind the curtain in the back like he was so afraid. And the opening scene, he sees this girl come running up the aisle and he's thinking, oh my gosh, she hates it. She hates it. The first scene she hates, she's walking out of the theater. And as she's walking closer to him, she stops and she throws up in the aisle.
Oh, nice.
He goes, wow, well, that invokes something. and he knew. He goes, well, that's it. If that made her feel that way, this is going to...
Exactly.
And you're right. I mean, whether it's bringing out a tear or it's making you feel scared, if it's bringing out emotion, you've touched on something. That's important.
Somewhere.
I love that, you're touching more on an emotional level and not on a, fearful level. But, it's very nice. And you've also written a lot of your poetry and put it on bookmarks to share with people.
Well, I did speaking engagements for a while, and I spoke at the Soldiers' Home and 2 or 3 senior centers, and I hand those out if anybody wants them when we're there. I'm down to the last street now.
So wait, I'm going to have you sign these.
Those are yours.
I'm going to have you sign these. These are going to be collector's items here. But no, I mean, you have a poem called We're Only Here for a While.
Yeah.
You Can't Go Back. And then the really great one I love, that's Old.
Oh, you like that?
Yeah, I like that. I'm old. I mean, we are. I'll give you the first 2 verses here. It says, when I wake up and start to rise, that's when I begin to realize I'm old. I limp around, 2 moves not easy, my back is sore, each breath is wheezy. I'm old. And yes, I mean, as we all get older, we start hearing those, creaks.
Exactly. So many people can relate to that.
Yeah, I mean, everything that you have written, people definitely relate to. Now, you've written, this children's book that you just came out with.
Yeah.
And this is your finished copy here. And, you're talking about the woman in your writers group that hung out with the Kennedys, but you have Ma Kennedy and the BLEEWIT. And Ma Kennedy is your mom.
My grandma.
Oh, your grandmother. Yeah. And
it was a personal story. She took us for a walk in the woods, and she scared the life out of us because she was afraid we'd wander away and get lost. Because when she was a child, she got lost in the woods.
In the woods, oh.
So she was terrified that so she made up this story about the BLEEWIT. And it's pretty interesting. And I had to change some of it because it was like Grimm's fairy tales at the beginning there's so much violence.
Yeah, get rid of the violent part, but keep the lesson and the moral of, staying on track and not getting lost.
That's my favorite part of the whole thing because I didn't want to scare the kids or anything.
Yeah.
And in one point, he asked, what does the BLEEWIT want with little children?
And what does the BLEEWIT want with little children?
He takes them to his cave, and he makes them eat raw onions, liver, and Brussels sprouts. What I put in there.
Well, I'd be okay with the Brussels sprouts part, but not the other things. And it sounds like he's trying to create Shreks, little ogres and Shreks.
Well, I put that in because she told us they were going to boil us in oil. So,
so your grandmother would take you on these walks in the woods, and kind of put the fear of the BLEEWIT in there, saying don't walk away from me, stay together, stay in our group, have a buddy system.
The big message right there.
Yeah.
And she explains that she just made it up, but think of what could happen.
Yeah.
And it's a good message for children.
Well, it's a nice children's story, like you said, that is, not scary.
Right.
But definitely can teach children that, when you're out, whether you're walking in the woods or you're with at the Big E in a crowd or something, to stay with your parents, to stay with the group that you're in. I don't know if they stress as much as they did when I was a kid about the buddy system. Like even when you were going to the bathroom, you bring a buddy with you.
Exactly.
You don't go anywhere alone because, you want to be safe. And, in this day and age, being safe is, something we have to always teach our kids. So if they have to be afraid of the BLEEWIT, then so be it. You brought your sample copy, and I think this is great for writers to see because, when you write the book, of course, it's not in this form.
Right.
And you bring it to a publisher, and they've given you a sample copy, a smaller version, so that you can go through it and you can see, do you like the layouts? Do you like the font? Do you like the color?
The graphics, the whole thing.
So you have some nice artwork in here.
Yeah, that's my grandson's wife. She's a teacher in Connecticut, and she does... she's a very good artist, and she does things in her home where people come and they paint.
Yeah, I mean, it's beautiful because here she has like the dandelions floating in the wind. I mean, it's really, nice artful pieces. Each one is kind of like their standalone art, and it's beautiful. And the coloring, I mean, I'm sure you're very happy with the coloring that came out.
Oh, yeah.
I wrote a children's book, and it was something that when I went to the publisher, it was, one of those things that you really have to watch for, and make sure that the coloring isn't, pixelated or blurry, and then picking out whether you want your paper to be glossy or matte, and the size book that you want. Like, it's a lot to, kind of pick and choose from.
Well, her name's Sarah McNamee, and she's very talented.
Yeah, and this is your granddaughter's wife.
My grandson's wife.
I mean, grandson's wife, yes. Yeah. Your grandson's wife. And, yeah, I mean, she's got some beautiful, beautiful artwork in here. Now, when she did the illustrations, did you tell her what you wanted for an illustration?
Oh, we collaborated on some of it, yeah.
Because, I mean, you had all the words written.
I had all the words, and I told her how I wanted to break it up into pages and so forth.
So she took the words and said, okay, I'm going to draw something that kind of matches along with it.
Yeah, she went right along
and
with
then,
it.
you obviously had final say.
Yeah.
Yeah, it came out really, really nice. And, so you have your proof. How long did it take you to complete the book from writing it to getting your illustrations done?
Probably year
1
and a
year?
half.
Okay.
Maybe a year and a half.
And
it's funny because it's a simple little children's book, but it's.
And where did you get it published?
Amazon.
So you loaded it up to the KDP publishing site.
Yep.
And with all the illustrations.
Yep.
And they were able to get all of this.
They did. They made us change the size.
Okay. Yeah.
Which was a problem because we had to alter all of the graphics and everything.
Yeah, I can see that.
So that's what held up most of it, but it's gotten quite a few 5-star ratings on it.
So you did it through the KDP Publishing, which when you do it through their site, obviously you can get it on Amazon's site.
Right.
You can buy your own copies.
Right.
And you're selling them at book signings. How are you marketing your book?
I haven't started it yet, but this is
You're
just
here
brand
today.
new.
We're marketing
It's
it.
brand new.
Okay.
And
it just came out this year.
Actually going to talk to them at the Agawam Library and maybe to the Springfield Library and read to the kids. And because I've been reading to children in daycares for quite a while. I read to 2 different daycares with this before I even dared put it out to see if they liked it.
Yeah.
And that went pretty well. So
Yeah, and I did that also, as I had given my book to a couple of the preschools and said, can I read it, or can you read it to the kids? And a couple of them pulled a few students aside to, have them read it and say, what do you think of this book, or what do you like about it? And, it's nice to get the feedback, especially from the kids, because getting feedback from an editor is completely different.
Exactly. Well, I was glad to be able to start. I didn't start writing until I was maybe 70 years old. I wrote some technical things for the company I worked for, and they were printed in national printing magazines. I was in the printing industry in one form or another for a lot of years.
So you've always had it in you to see things in print.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, it's been
to
there.
Hold it in your hand.
It's been there forever. Yeah.
That's very cool. So now you're 73?
I'm 88.
You're 88.
I'm 88 years old.
God bless you.
Yeah.
See, you're just there. There is never a wrong time to start writing.
Never.
I mean, whether you handwrite or you're using your laptop or an iPad, I mean, you can dictate stories into your phone. There's so many ways to get those stories.
Well, I have a 96-year-old woman that's in my class that's just wonderful. And she never wrote anything in her life before, anything seriously.
Yeah.
And she's just having a blast. She's so good.
I love that. And even if she just has it at least written and her family has that as a
that's
keepsake,
what it is.
It's a beautiful keepsake. And who knows, maybe, if she doesn't publish it, someone in her family may one day, whether they publish it for the public or, in something private like this.
So many things in there that were so interesting. She's had 7 children, too.
Wow.
And a couple of them are doctors, and it was just interesting. You're listening to her every week.
And I'm thinking, okay, so you're 88 years old, and how old were you when you went for that walk with your grandmother in the woods?
6, maybe 7.
Wow, so you're talking a story that she shared with you 82 years ago.
Yeah, I never even thought about it like that.
Has stuck with you this long.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's just amazing.
It's amazing once you start thinking back, all this stuff comes back to you. And I said, gee, I could have put this in, or I could have put that in.
Yeah, that's one part about writing where, especially after it's published, you're like, the woulda, shoulda, coulda.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, oh, I should have done that. I could have done that, but maybe you just have another book inside you to do.
I might. I was going to do an abridged version of this one.
Of My Life and Times.
Yeah. In the front, everyone has stories about their life that should be told. These are mine.
Mm-hmm. And when you were writing this book, did you start, are there little snapshots of time?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It all goes all the way through. I didn't do a lot with my kids when they were young or any of that, but I got up to that point, and I did some of my career, because my career blossomed also. That was an unbelievable story, too. I never thought I'd do anything like that.
Yeah.
And I ended up, I was a national product manager for the 3rd largest printing equipment company in the world.
And what did you do for the printing company?
I was national product manager, but my territory was all in North America and Mexico. And I used to have to travel to Sweden a couple times a year where it was manufactured. And
wow.
I went all over the world.
Well, it is amazing, the people who have created the machines to do the printing. And, I mean...
What a difference from the beginning, because I started out, it was just...
It was a mimeograph?
The days of the wooden ship. It was even before that when they had movable type.
Gosh, yeah, I've seen those. Those are... Yeah. I can't even imagine having to move all the little letters when they did the magazine. I mean, newspapers, and I mean, that's a lot of work.
Yeah, well, I started that in junior high school at Buckingham Junior High, where I got interested in it and took it from there.
So you went from finding out how things get printed to actually writing and getting yourself printed.
How about that? Full circle, huh?
It's totally full circle. And it just shows that, our journey in life is all connected. Even though sometimes we think well, why am I doing this now? Eventually, it all ties together.
It does.
It all ties together. Well, I love that you've come in. Are you doing any more local talks? You said you're going to do something at the Agawam Library?
Possibly. Okay. I'm going to offer it up, see what they say.
Yeah, no, I would definitely come. I'd love to hear more about your stories and read more about your read more of your poems. You do something else in writing that is very similar to something I do, where is, you'll be inspired to write something to share with someone. And I know, you brought this along, and there's a girl in West Springfield, Casey Burdick, who had passed away at a very young age. And, I've seen, her gravesite, and, definitely had reflections of, a young girl who's passed away. And you wrote a poem about her.
Right. Well, it started out, I had a grandson that died at 22 years old from muscular dystrophy.
Yeah.
I was on the Jerry Lewis telethon for almost 22 years.
Really? I'm sure I must have seen you, because I
was
watched
there.
them all the time.
But anyway, I go to St. Thomas Cemetery, and I just want me to read it.
Yeah.
Okay. Ode to Casey Burdett. I walk around these hallowed grounds I visit once a week. My grandson lies at rest there, in God's hands to keep. While walking on these lonely paths, I wander in my gloom, to think of all the lives in there that ended way too soon. And then I find a little stone, a stone that's got it right. It eases all my sadness to see this beautiful sight. It gives a message of loss and love with flowers and a teddy bear. This showed to me a life well lived, celebrated by those who care. I kneel to pray there once a week, at the site I'll never forget, the day that I found my inner peace at the place for Casey Burdett. Although I never met her, I loved her from the start. She shares space now with my grandson, somewhere in my heart.
It's so beautiful. And, it resonates a lot with me, because there's, a lot of people who have passed that, you get that feeling that you've never met. And they share a space in your heart.
There was a while I couldn't even read that back to myself.
Yeah, well, you're a great reader. I might want to suggest that you do some sort of audiobook, like read your children's book and capture your voice on audio.
Yeah.
Things like that would be great.
Yeah.
Well, where can you tell people where they can get a copy of your book?
Yeah, it's on Amazon. You just look up Bruce Cone. That's C-O-N-E, like ice cream cone. I get that all the time.
Okay.
And
all right.
It'll come up because it's the only one I've actually got on in here.
Okay, so it's Ma Kennedy and the BLEEWIT.
Yeah.
And they can definitely get that on Amazon, and I'm going to put the link below, so that when they, watch this on the YouTube channel at least, or any of the streaming channels, they'll be able to see, how to get to it. So thank you so much for coming in. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Yeah. Thank you for, keeping me calm during the fire this past weekend.
that was unbelievable.
I'm so glad that we got to meet in person. And I kept saying, wow, I was saved for sure. And I'm like, okay, I have a purpose. My purpose is to meet Bruce on Wednesday. So I definitely have to keep living. So thank you so much again. And I want to thank my listening audience and Studio 954 for making this show possible. I really appreciate that you tune in each week to find out about the writers that we have in our local and worldwide community here on yWrite. And this is the part of the program where if you're a regular listener, you definitely know what's about to happen. But when the show ends, I just ask you to set a timer, whether it's on your watch, or if it's on your phone or your microwave or an alarm clock, whatever it is, for 5 or 10 minutes, and just start writing. And, we like to give you a little prompt every week to start writing. And today, we've had author Bruce Cone here, who has, been inspired from writing poetry into sharing the stories that his grandmother shared with him as a boy and writing it into a children's book. And I know that, you have a story that someone shared with you in your life. Maybe it's, one of the bedtime stories your mom would tell you at night, or maybe it's one of those, wise tales that about, the buddy system, or even just, something about an experience that you had maybe when you were with a friend or when you were alone that could teach someone a lesson. So I think if you just pick up your pen and start writing a story today about, I want to share this story because this is the lesson I learned from it, I think you're going to really enjoy this time writing. And who knows, maybe you're going to put together your own book one day to publish. So again, thank you for joining me, Angela Grout, on this program called yWrite. And I hope that you're subscribing to the YouTube channel and you'll stay tuned in every week to watch everything. Have a great day, and I will see you next time.